Hi guys, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Caleb Kuphall here. Today I'm going to talk to you about jig fishing. This is my homemade jig. I've won a lot of money on this over the years, but you're going to have to wait till the end of the video to check it out. First one I want to talk to you about today is the swim jig. This particular bait has a very narrowed down head, and that's for one reason. It's so it can just slide through cover really easy. Generally with a bait like this, it's a cast and reel type bait, so you're casting it out, reeling it in, shaking your rod with it, giving it a lot of action. A lot of times you put a trailer on this bait that has a real erratic type action. So when using this bait, I usually use it with a fairly heavy wire hook. I like to use this particular bait with braid. I run 30 to 40 pound braid on it. And it's got a really light wire weed guard on there, so it can compress fairly easily. And that's just to make hooking up with fish, a lot easier. So most people use a swim jig for shallow fish. Let's say 2 to 5 foot is where you'd primarily use a swim jig. But I've found over the years that you can run this as deep as you want. You can count it down to, even suspended fish up to, 20, 25 feet deep. So it's really a versatile bait. You can use it for a lot of different things. But primarily most people use it for the shallow type cover. Swim jig being a very versatile bait, I use it pretty much any time of the year from early spring all the way through fall. It's just been a great search bait for me, find fish and catch them. If you've never tried a swim jig, grab one and give it a shot. Next one I want to talk about is the Finesse Jig. This is a very slimmed down version of pretty much any other jig you're going to be using. Personally, I like using a ball head type style. You're not going to be using this bait around a lot of weeds. Generally, it's going to be very, very sparse cover, rocks, sand bottom, stuff like that. It's got a very thin skirt material on it, small kind of light wire hook. Generally, when you're throwing this bait, you're only throwing it on, say, 10 to 15 pound line. Personally, I like fluorocarbon. So the really small profile, generally fishing for really pressured fish. This will also support a very, very light weed guard. Like I said, you're using light line on it, so when you're setting the hook, especially from a distance, you want a light weed guard to get that hook in the fish. So next one I want to talk about is the football head jig. Generally, when you're running these, you're not running it through a lot of cover. Again, it's a very sparse cover type deal. Run it over rocks, sand drops, that sort of thing. It's generally a bait that you're going to use on pretty light line as well, 10 to 15 pound line. Personally, I like a 12 pound fluorocarbon. The head design on a football head is very unique. Obviously, it's like a football, but it's to make the bait stand up basically, and it's made to drag, so it'll pretty much keep like an attack style profile. Crawdad imitation when it's on the bottom. So having the football head style also makes it have a very straight kind of fall. Again, this style of bait will have a really thin light wire weed guard on it. You're setting the hook from a mile away generally with these baits, and just to have that lighter wire allows you to get the hook in the fish a lot better. So this is the one you've been waiting for. This is the flipping jig that I make. I've been making this jig for probably the last 10, 12, 15 years. And it's really won a lot of money for me over the years. But it's just a standard flipping jig. Generally with this style, you can use it in a lot of different situations. You can use it in thicker cover, thin cover, bounce it over rocks and that. It's just got a head design that allows you to do a bunch of different things with it. So this one, I like to run a much thicker weed guard on there. This is a very heavy gauge for when I'm running in those thick weeds. I don't want it to get hung up a lot. And generally you're using a heavier poundage line with this. I'm using 17 to 20 pound test is generally what I run on this bait. What makes this my favorite jig is its versatility. I can run this thing all over the country in all different kind of situations from spring through winter time, and this thing pretty much always catches them. So one of the most important aspects of throwing the jig would be the trailer that you're using. Generally the trailer is going to give the bait whatever action you want in it, and just want to show you a couple different trailers. This one right here, just a straight tail deal. I use this one on a finesse jig, a flipping jig. You can use it on basically almost anything you want, but generally when you're using a straight tail deal is you don't want to create a whole ton of action. It's more like a crawdad, a tack style, or just something that you want, just a real kind of subtle action to it. It's the one that I use the most probably out of all my trailers. And then the second one that I use would be this guy. It's going to have a lot more action to it. This is a baby pack a craw from NetBait. And with this one, you're going to have a lot of claw action. The claws are going to go like this in the water, and it's just going to displace a lot of water. So I use this bait on, either in the heat of the summer when I want a lot of action on my bait, those fish are really active, or on a swim jig style bait where you're doing a lot of swimming with it. You got those claws going, just a great way to trigger those fish into striking. And then the third one I use is something like this. It's a twin tail model, and this one is basically going to be used on something that's going to pull a lot of water. If you really want to like slow the fall of your jig down, that'll be a good one to go with. Something that you need a lot of action for. Generally, a lot of guys use twin tails on football heads. That's just been a great one over the years for something when you're dragging along the bottom. It's got a lot of action to it, so that's a good one to go with as well. But for my money, I use this one, the straight tail one, probably 80% of the time, I would say. So those are my jig trailers. Give those a try. So no matter where you're fishing around the country, you can usually find a jig to do the job in pretty much any situation. Next time you're on the water, give a jig a try. I'm sure it'll catch some fish for you. Thanks for watching, guys.